There you go. Perfect. So it's been a very busy week in the country, and so far a lot is happening as we speak. Having in mind that politically speaking, the finance bill is here. We've heard what Reverend Kobia has also said, that hate speech is also something that he's dealing with and he's going to handle it, they say, cacamoniously. Hezbollah Omolo is here with me in studio. When they say cacamoniously, you can relate. Hezbollah, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Yes. We talked about, what did you make, first of all, with that discussion we had with Dr. Kobia, the hate speech and the sermons. NCIC has actually given me a book here, Transgenerational Conversations, that is published by the NCIC. I'll take a look at it later on. But what did you make of that? NCIC, Dr. must be having a lot of work to do right now.
I think NCIC has its work cut out. Clearly, the mood in the nation is not one that would inspire confidence, especially around matters to do with hate speech. Our politicians have continued to go overboard, and gradually a lot is being left unchecked, and I think that is a dangerous journey. We don't want to be reminded of the terrible past we've had as a country, and therefore the responsibility is for every Kenyan to carry out themselves in a manner that shows leadership and in a manner that does not incite people. Political difference will always be there, but leaders must be leaders. And when they step out of bounds, the agencies charged with the responsibility to take action should swing in swiftly, and I want to urge NCIC go beyond the talk. There has been so much being said, and all they do is just bark, no bite. They have a responsibility to bite, and the sooner they bite, the better, so that politicians appreciate that you can't just have a carte blanche. We've had in previous years gone by, leaders have been arrested, have been taken to police stations and charged. And I think that sets the tone so that leaders speak with some measure of caution, knowing that they can inflame. And the Bible says the words can be very powerful. They can the build,
power of the tongue.
But they can also really damage our society.
Okay. All right. FCPA, Hezbollah Omolo, is a council member of ISPAC. We'll be discussing matters to do with the finance bill. Just what you really want to know in as far as this finance bill, and make comparisons, what happened last year, what you're expecting this year, some of the adjustments made by Mbadi. But FCPA, let me just take you through the front page of the local dailies, as we usually do it. Let's discuss what was on the front page. Ruto hits 1,000 days. Number one, President Ruto rode to power on lofty promises, projecting himself as the champion of the majority poor. But an assessment of his midterm record exposes missed targets and a nation in crisis, as demonstrated by crisis public discontent that boiled over last year during bloody nationwide anti-tax riots. That is what I have here. So half-term mark presents an opportunity to assess president's performance ahead of 2027 general election. I mean, we're all here. What do you make of his 1,000 days in office? Of course, there is an aspect of economy and health. I'll give you the breakdown of the figures as we move along.
I think the president has, by and large, done well, given the circumstances under which he's operated over the last 2 years. We are all aware that in the first year of his reign, we had the cost of living protests, the Sofuria protests.
Which is also captured here.
That, in a way, derailed progress. And then in the second year, we had the finance bill. So he's had a very turbulent first 2 years. And in terms of how that then impacts the leadership and ability to implement programs, it's clear then that that has had a bit of a dent in what he's been able to achieve. Remember, we've had a conversation of the deputy president being removed and being replaced. We now have the broad-based government. So a lot of things have changed in between. But amidst all those challenges, there are also a few things you can talk of very positively. We had very serious concerns about the price of basic commodities, especially unga. That has largely
But is it reflected? When Jiku will say, well, there's a significant touch on the price of commodities.
Of course, if you look at the price of maize, for example, that's a staple food. What was it in August 2022? What is it now? Definitely that has improved. Of course, other factors come into play. When you talk about cost of living, it's not just about one or two items. It's the overall inflation. It keeps growing, of course, even though at a lower rate. So all these things crystallize to what you'd look at as part of the overall health of the economy. Then we had serious challenges of public debt management. We had the risk of default. We had the dollar escalating to 160 because there was a fear that Kenya would even default, and there was need for us to get money to repay the Eurobond. So all those have been addressed in one way or the other.
Very big threat in our economy.
Yes, it was a very big threat. So it's a mixed bag. That's how I would term the 2 years of the leadership. Probably as he stabilizes towards year 4 and 5, he can focus more on implementing, and even if he doesn't achieve 100%, the promises, at least get to 50-60% of some of those key ones, because some of them are resource heavy. Things such as affordable housing, it comes with a lot of work in it, and of course you need to get the taxes to implement them. So it's not an easy journey.
Again, on the front page of the Daily Nation, there is two things captured here, the economy and the health. Number one, it says that the GDP growth, Kenya's GDP grew by 4.8% in 2022, but it slightly dropped to 4.7 in 2024. The inflation again, the inflation was about 7.6% in 2022, 7.7 in 2023. As of May 2025, it says that inflation had decreased to 3.8%. Perhaps you can give us some of the indicators, but then the exchange rate that you've also talked about, the shilling rate was 120 in September 2022, and by June 5th, 2025, the rate was 129. On the health segment, again captured by the Daily Nation, is the UHC 8,571 workers hired by the Ministry of Health in 2020. They earn a salary of 50,000 shillings monthly. But then there is also a number of 22 million Kenyans who had registered for SHA by May 13, 2025, and 1.2 million people have had their bills paid, which claims, with claims amounting to 45 billion shillings. That is on the front page of the Daily Nation. Kevin Osido is the Executive Director of the County Governance Watch. We call him Kevo. Good morning, my brother. You're well?
I am fine.
Good to see you.
And you too.
Karibu sana.
Thank you so much.
1,000 days in office.
Yes.
Here we are. Your office has been very busy. Your assessment?
1,000 days in office, struggling, extremely struggling, particularly for a gentleman who has been a deputy president and during the campaigns clearly indicated that he knows what is ailing the country and needs to fix it. And so the expectations of the majority of the citizens were that really fix it and ensure that the losses that we incurred during the previous regime are actually dealt with, and that we are able to have a number of stabilities from economics, key service delivery areas like education, health, macro sectors, again, like agriculture, and that government is able to...
Shortly. I'll fix something briefly. Okay. Sorry for that. I'll come back to you, Kevin. On the front page of the Star newspaper, let's talk about CS Mbadi's budget to hurt farmers, school children, FCPA. This is not good news for you. I mean, how would you break down the budget for us so that my kinsmen in the village can understand? I mean, when you talk about farmers and school children, this is going to hurt. Go ahead.
I think when you talk about the budget hurting school children, I think that headline speaks to the aspect of the school feeding program in terms of how much money is allocated there. And that ignores the rest of the education sector budget, which is highest in the entire budget at 700 billion. I think is the next expenditure line after interest on public debt that is high. So indeed there's growth. There are certain areas of education that have benefited. The school feeding program has probably gotten a hit. So probably that can be looked at when the bill goes before the floor of Parliament. But when you talk about the agricultural sector, I would look at it a little bit differently. I know the allocation for fertilizer subsidy was scaled down from 14 billion to 8 billion. And that would probably be the main reason why the conversation around that is happening. And then, of course, there's the issue of transitioning the VAT status for transport for products such as cane to exempt status. That could also be, in a way, a hit on farmers. But we'll be able to explain some of the reasons why the government has gone on a very big scale of transitioning certain items from zero-rated status or standard status to exempt status. More to do with managing the cost of VAT administration. So much has been spent on refunds, and therefore the government needed to look at that aspect. But I think generally the budget, other than that, not many additional measures of taxes have been levied, and therefore I see more reforms in the tax administration process than additional tax burden to the taxpayer. So to what extent they affect the wananchi is then the issue.
We'll get into the details, the differences and some of the notable adjustments that is going to be put in this budget that were not put in the last year's budget. Of course, we had a lot of issues in the country 1 year down the line. But Kevin, again, good morning.
I have no mic. Has been taken away.
Your mic is on.
It is on?
Your mic is on.
Okay.
Yeah. Your mic is on. All right. So, 1,000 days, for the sake of fairness, 1,000 days is 1 minute. I know you're a good man and you'll try. And CS Mbadi's budget to hurt farmers and school children. Go ahead.
So the president is aiming at fixing a number of challenges that are denting his performance. And I believe that from he's been the core of with regards to the challenges, because of our politically driven economics, you realize that there's a very strong hand, a very strong political hand around that. Whether you talk about other sectors that are like service delivery, again, the policy making, the legal regime is largely politically driven. And so the imagination with the politics, looking at the major political drivers, king queens within the politics, then to deal. King queens are people like Mheshimiwa Martha Karua, you know what I mean? Political queens, among others. Of course, the CS Mbadi's budget hurts to farmers and school children. There's been this big talk around the lack of a very clear, effective around education. So basically the major sectors. And those major sectors are, for instance, agriculture, education, health. And so the expectation from a majority of Kenyans and even families are that we'll be able to ensure that the budget policy statement and the finance bill really focuses on how we drive at responding to these major challenges from, school children, school fees, one of those key issues. The other day we had that education, for example, examination fees were not budgeted for, basically the examination process in total. So those are things which I think would be able to, excite a majority of families and therefore narrowing down to how we are able to attract engagements from family levels to children, to the entire fraternity of the education sector. Of course, there are lots of good wins, win-wins for farmers, from, as Hezbon has rightfully said, in the macro agriculture, cane or sugar. Again, that have been exempted or zero rated like fertilizer. Again, a very interesting concern to farmers, and therefore we look at how that therefore relates to how they engage from the level of productivity all the way to consumption and all the way again to how you're able to put monies into your pocket and therefore take care of your families. Yeah.
How about the counties? I mean, the revenue, allocation, they've been crying for an increment. And perhaps, what did you make of that?
Yeah, precisely. And even for this year, we again have an increment allocation on equitable share for county governments, just as we had again in the last budget.
Yes.
But serious conversations still that have to go in terms of sustaining those allocations. Because once the process gets to Bunge, then the conversations between the senators and the National Assembly in what we call KARA, the County Allocation and County Allocation and Revenue Act, then becomes dented, and that is the point at which we begin to see reductions in what Treasury has already allocated to counties. But that notwithstanding, again, concerns around on-source revenue and how we can be able to use the national government equitable share to spur productivity and revenue allocation from counties.
Hold on that. We take a break and we come back. We just want to talk about everything in as far as finance bill is concerned. Break it down. All right, stay with us. We'll be right back with more.
Nineteen nations will compete in the Total Energies CAF African Nations Championship, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania 2024, which will be staged from 2nd to 30th August 2025. Amongst the 4 groups in the tournament A to D, Kenya is pooled in Group A, together with Morocco, Angola, DR Congo and Zambia.
From the set piece, the header is on target, but it's saved.
This unique competition featuring the best locally based players from across the continent definitely has something for everyone. Just as you let it flow live and exclusive on KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner.
In a world where news is ever changing, staying informed is more important than ever.
Join us every week on News Check, your go-to show for the latest in current affairs, breaking news and in-depth analysis.
A warm welcome to KBC News Check.
From politics to global events, we bring you content that matter to you.
We're not just speaking about the governance and how we want to see it, but want to actually participate.
Get your facts, hear from the experts, and really understand what is happening around you.
We need to change our system first.
You have to do the impossible to make sure the message is home.
Stay ahead, stay informed, stay engaged.
Will these people, everybody agree?
Just listen to me.
Let's give him a chance to clear the air.
Catch News Check every Tuesday and Wednesday from 10 a.m. to 12 noon, only on KBC Channel 1.
Welcome back. All right. So the house is getting full moment by moment. So let's come back and have this discussion. Deputy Governor of Machakos, he says that he's our cousin. Because Machakos and Nairobi are not far apart. Hi, cousin.
Hi. Good morning.
Good morning. All right. So, Kevin, I gave you a moment so that you can just nail it finally, what you are submitting. In as far as counties are concerned, the issue number one to do with the county revenue allocation from the national government, and then you'll also talk about the issue to do with the county is also looking for more money for development. The NGCDF, there was a public participation around 3 weeks ago also. We can talk about that, but you can finalize your submission.
Yeah, so the emphasis therefore needs to really get to looking at how we generate more revenue from counties. And part of the challenge has been, of course, the dents that we continue to see, particularly from functions of Schedule 4. Devolved functions have not been fully devolved, and we huge allocations from national government to national government for counties that to counties like health, agriculture, among others. Of course, one of the best news that came over the weekend, towards the weekend, was the court ruling, the High Court ruling on roads maintenance levy of the 10 billion, which again was very contentious in the previous budget. And so we are hoping that there's going to be goodwill to ensure that these resources get to the counties. But again, counties must make very deliberate steps to be able to, and DG is here, he'll probably share with us some of those things that they are doing to be able to enhance their own source revenue. And we've seen, for example, His Excellency the President, rallying this one, what I would call probably one-stop shop for governments, both for the 47 counties and the one national government, around programs that can be able to spur productivity, despite the fact that they are either devolved or concurrent. But already we see political goodwill around rallying governors and stakeholders for counties to be able in areas such as blue economy. For example, we are talking about the digital economy for young people and what again counties are doing with their digital hubs. We continue to see a lot of talk through the Office of the Deputy President around the KIPES, the County Aggregated Aggregation Industrial Parks, to be able to spur again entrepreneurial spirit, innovation among young people. And so all these things, despite being devolved, but we see a lot of strong narratives and a very strong hand of the national government partnering. I assume it's a partnership between county governments to be able to engage in this process. And of course, finally, is even affordable housing, which is also largely devolved. But you see a very huge engagement of national government. And so we are hoping that these are being done to be able to ensure that there is a space that is carved around productivity, about employment creation, which is not very clearly indicated, particularly in this particular budget, in terms of efforts that are being put to be able to create employment for young people. Remember that in the last budget, the youth were very clear around what they want, our asks, our wins for this particular budget. And we've not seen a very clear intentional engagement of course, National Treasury and stakeholders to be able to show us how these jobs are being created. And so I imagine that the President's goodwill around dealing with the politics and driving this one-stop shop for governments will be able to also help us, rather open our eyes to see how we can be able to spur economic growth from employment creation and therefore investing more in macro sectors like agriculture, among others.
All right. DG, what do you really need to understand about this coming budget? First of all, you had a very busy weekend in the county. We'll talk about that later on. But what do we really need to understand about this coming budget, and as far as even the county's development is concerned?
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah.
What I want to say basically is anything that is proposed, it is incumbent of Kenyans to know it is going to come from them. The rest can only be borrowed or a grant from somewhere. And with the war, with the various wars and instabilities, fragiles around the world, the issue of grants might not be that forthcoming. So it leaves us with two options. So one, we raise funds from the citizens, or we borrow from various sources. We have a role as per the two levels of government. In counties, you are talking about own source revenue. At national level, it still remains the two or three options. From what basically I've seen is there are two things I can comment on. One is I think slowly by slowly, from where I sit, we are reducing counties to just entities which exist in the constitution. And we are seeing national government almost slowly taking over all those functions that are supposed to be done or undertaken by the counties. Now, you have asked another question, or the question of what counties are doing as far as this budget. But before I go there, there are so many areas that have been affected by the proposal, because what is before us now is a proposal to the parliament. When you talk of food security, what are the incentives are we putting in place to ensure our farmers are producing to sell internally, to feed themselves, and even make something out of it? When you reduce monies for subsidies, for fertilizers, for supply of seeds, you are not really addressing that challenge. Instead, you are increasing food insecurity. Issue of education. When you reduce funding for whether basic or higher education, what you are really doing is you are interfering with the future of this country in one way or the other, because there is no country ever that has developed, transformed, without ensuring they have a good, watertight, well-resourced education system. And you see allocations like you don't expect presidency. They don't manufacture anything. They don't facilitate anything. When you look at the allocation to that office, and it to increase every financial year. I don't know what, or as we approach maybe the elections, there is need to ensure the office is well resourced. But I think it is an office that we need to look into. When you look at the allocation to some entities that might ensure, once we raise they are not looted, they are not mismanaged to go and do funny empowerment programs elsewhere. Look at the allocation to allocation to critical agencies like ESCC, DCI, and the National Police Service, which hold this country together. It's a worrying proposal that needs to be relooked at.
Very well. Let's welcome CPA Ronald Bossi, who is a group managing partner. Ronald's LLP is also joining us in studio. Ronald, good morning.
Morning.
Welcome. Are you affected by the budget that is set to be read on Thursday as a Kenyan?
Okay, I can't say I'm affected, but I'm likely to be affected.
Right.
Because it's not been implemented.
Is your life under threat? Okay.
Of course, there are threats, and there are also opportunities in the budget. Of course, the threats are a number of tax variations that are likely to increase the cost of goods. We've seen VAT, a number of shifting from zero rated to exempt. The taxpayers will of the exempt means the VAT. That's the fact that because of affordable housing, the SHA, for the health insurance, and of course the pay increases budget. So those taxes that are going as a consumer of goods, and of course as just a practitioner, I've also looked at some very serious. For instance, when the government is saying that when you have a matter that is court, and then you are supposed to give agency notice in order to collect those funds being decided at the very serious, and it's going to affect taxpayers very seriously. And the other some I feel are going to affect taxpayers person is also the issue of resources. And one of the things I can say that the finance bill, as a country, we should be susceptible to having a finance bill every year. Okay, even if it's there, because it's a constitutional process, it should not be disruptive like the way it is.
Predictable.
It should be predictable. We had tax losses being pegged at 10 years. Then we say you can now recover infinitively. Then now 5 years. So it's making the investor environment, and looking at it, because currently the global countries are competing in trying to increase their competitive advantage by minimizing their tax obligations. And if you look at our neighbors, they are doing, and they are to create losing investment. Like you can only recover them within 5 years. Huge investment, so more than 10 years. And sometimes most of our policymakers are really in business and understand sometimes when you make huge capital investment, especially for manufacturing, if you want to serve the regions, it will take more than 5 years to recover your cost of investment. But we are saying if you don't recover within 5 years, you pay tax whether covered.
How does this hit Wanjiku directly? Because I'm trying to imagine if the business environment is quite hostile.
Yes.
Of the day.
Of course. Yeah, it's going to. If there are no companies, jobs, then people, the way we are saying, there's a activity. It's going to increase more pressure to the government. And you cannot try to say, you know, the way we are saying, like you're creating jobs for the youth. Everyone. You have to identify the private sector, more people, everywhere, because the youth, the program to just on the road, the GDP, try to empower the president. We can create credible employment, and then make sure that there is no much idle youth who will come in as Gen Z to push the government through activism activities.
Great. Hesbon, Wanjiku, because at the end of the day, when is going to pay the tax, so we need to know of 2025 layman's language, something that when they be is the price of milk and
I think look at the one type or the other.
Yes.
That I would nothing of that nature. But then other like when you number and place the exempt state when you are under means that process of the value of cannot be clear. That is taken out. The interpretation of that is that the go up. And even if you talk to Kenya Association of Manufacturers, they will say zero rated status to exempt, it's priced by the component of related inputs that go into manufacturing the product. The only other argument from KRA point of view has been that every time they've moved items to zero rated status, there is no corresponding increase in, or rather reduction in price of commodities, the manufacturers do not pass the benefit to the consumers. Instead, they absorb it. So it therefore, from a government point of view, it also creates an issue, because when a commodity is moved to zero-rated status, it comes with VAT cost to government, because you're going to refund the related inputs that the manufacturers or producers have put in. So the government has a bill of probably 200-300 billion around VAT related to those commodities. So one of the things the government is running away from by moving a lot of commodities to exempt status is to reduce the cost the government pays in VAT refunds. That is exactly what they're targeting. So the balance is, can we look at both sides? Moving the commodities to exempt status is almost certain that the manufacturers, the commodities price will probably go up. But at the same time, leaving them where they are, there's also the cost. So it's a balance. Does the loss of 300 or so billion in tax refunds, how does it weigh compared to the price of commodities going slightly up? So that's what then we must get a balance. So sometimes we have to strike a balance.
How is it going? Waiting to hear. Present. Is it going to make life easier?
I think there are areas it will make life easier. There are areas it may make life a little bit difficult. I think when it, like you had mentioned earlier, when it comes to education, the expectation is that those struggling families that would ordinarily enjoy that one meal in school are going to struggle, because that budget has been, that component of the budget has been reduced. Those who are farming and expect to get cheaper fertilizer, we have reduced the component of that fertilizer subsidy from 14 billion to 8 billion. So as a farmer, you are likely to get affected slightly. But on the flip side of it, there are other compensating benefits that come. For example, you realize that almost all the sugar factories that were government-owned have been placed into private hands. That is, they've been leased out. So the costs associated with some of the running then is passed to the private sector. Is it possible that the private sector that will be running these factories will be also rolling out a support structure to our farmers, for example? For example, as a miller, you need to take care of your farmers. Do you give them inputs that you deduct at the point of payment, or how do you handle them? So those are things that ordinarily, from a government perspective, state millers have struggled to support farmers.
Okay. Let me come back to you, DG. When you talk about on-source revenue, most of the counties probably either are not meeting their target, or if they hit their target, then it's a lot of a struggle for the counties. You're also looking for more money, revenue from the national government. This is going to have a spiral effect when it comes to, you know, taxpayers, all of us here, to go into the to development to the counties. What proposals do you have for the national treasury?
Victor, allow me to just make one statement.
Go ahead.
You know, the professionals you have invited here, they are simply telling Kenyans one simple thing. That is, if this proposal goes through and it is implemented, it means more hard time for Kenyans. It is as simple as that. Back to your question. And why am I saying this, by the way? It means if my child was feeding in school, I have a responsibility now to feed that child before he or she goes to school. What it means is I will have to pay. You know, under the last administration, the students' exam fees was being paid by the state. It has since been done away with. It means I get back to my pocket and pay for that student. It also means that more taxation is coming, because there's a proposal to increase rates for NSSF on top of SHA issues, because also the revenues we are discussing from Kenyans. Now, to your question about on-source revenue and what we are doing as counties to to ensure we have enough. Now, you have put it correctly that well, some are meeting, others don't. Many parts of this country as developed as others.
Yeah.
So we have, for example, the counties within the metropolitan, the counties with the city status, they enjoy the large manufacturing base, large business base. And that means counties are able to raise their own source revenue within those areas more than those rural counties.
Yeah.
Allow me to use that term in reference to less developed counties. So they cannot compete. You don't expect Nairobi City County to develop, to compete in terms of revenue with the rural-based counties. Now, another factor is you look at by the current administration. Like in the case of Machakos, we have never raised any tax or introduced a new one. Why? Regime by the national government. If we go that route in the name of trying to raise revenue to do development and pay our salaries, definitely we are going to increase poverty in our county. So we have not gone that route. But what we have done...
How is it working now that we have, life is dynamic? I mean,
yes, what we have done...
raising taxes.
Yes. What we have done is we have sealed the loopholes.
Right.
Done away with the pay bills, 200 and almost 33. We found in place only two, one for health and another one for another general revenue. So we don't interact with the money in Machakos County. All the monies go to the account directly through a pay bill.
Okay.
You don't at all pay any cash, any single cent anywhere by now as I sit here. So we are trying to seal some loopholes so that we can increase collection of our own source revenue and finance some of our programs. And that is what is happening even in most of the counties. And I'm saying this because I serve as an official of the National DG's Forum. So I know what is happening in many of these counties.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good trend. But again, Kevin, when you listen to DG, sealing the loopholes, I'll come back to that shortly. But let's of zero rating or to tax exempt, as DG said that they're just sugarcoating. They're using, the professional jargon to sugarcoat. But you said that life is going to be hard for Wanjiku, right?
Yes.
Is it so,
yes.
Hesbon?
Not necessarily. And I did say that there is no evidence that any time you keep items under zero rating, that the manufacturers have passed that on to the consumers.
Yes. Okay.
So from where I see it, yes, it may increase the cost of doing business for the manufacturers, but again, they are also, on one hand, also guilty in one way or the other, because when they get the advantage, they don't pass it to the consumer.
Okay.
That's what I meant. But also what that then therefore means, that the government is saving some 300 billion or thereabouts that they would have ordinarily paid, that they can now redirect to other essential services that support the mwananchi. So, but having said that, allow me to just also mention something very important. I think part of the challenge we have with our devolved units, one, there's that delayed contribution disbursement, and then of course there are certain devolved services that need to be rolled out and resources availed to them. But again, if 41 out of 47 counties are not responding to the 35% emolument cap, if all of them are spending 50-60% of their money on salaries, so perhaps it's time to look at how bloated are these devolved units. Some of them are gone on employment spree. In 1-2 years, others have added 100-200 million in their payroll. That then deprives them of the resources to roll out other activities.
Yeah.
And by extension, it makes life also very difficult there because they cannot pay the suppliers of services at the local level. That even affects wananchi more. So we have to look at it both ways, resource these counties, but also let's have some hygiene around how these counties manage their payroll. It's actually a very messy space across the country. I'm sure the DG here will tell you, Machakos, probably they're doing over 55% of what they get on salaries. When the law says restrict yourself to 35. Why is that not possible? It means the leadership must ask itself, what is the optimal staffing level each county needs to have?
Yes, I can.
You are accused.
No, but it's not just a Machakos problem. I want to say it's a nationwide problem.
National.
And the Auditor General has flagged this and control of budget consistently.
Okay. Yeah. You know, when you talk about the issue of counties again, because this is where now the entire structure of governance meets Wanjiku at the grassroots level. So how would the national government, when you talk about the disbursement of money from the national government to the counties, they're also having their own source revenue. Sometimes they hit it, sometimes they don't meet the target. So how would the embodied budget, from your own desk, again, as the county governors watch, did you have some of the proposals to support the counties?
Precisely, and if you look at some of the work that we have done, for example, I have a report here on which we released in December 2024 on County Integrated Transparency and Accountability Report. What this shows us from around 11 counties that we engaged out of the 47, citizens are much more aware about many things, from budget processes. If you walked into a number of our kiosks in the villages, in the border sheds, they will tell you what the budget process entails, what policy is being done, where public participation of citizens is supposed to be done, etc.
Yes.
So that therefore excites a lot of interest and creates entry points for citizens into both the national government budget and the county budgets, because this process is done at two levels, the national level and then the county level. So if you look at some of the findings, for example, on open government, our counties are much more open right now. So if you looked at, for example, the websites, you will find critical documents, like the CIDP is uploaded, the ADP is uploaded, the budget from the last years to this year's is uploaded, and even the stakeholders by sector. So who is doing what where, and what are the allocations for counties in those critical sectors. So that therefore gives us an opportunity to be able to engage with the citizens even up to the level of the national government budget, because that really is where everything starts. For this year, we have seen an increment. I don't know whether to call it an increment in equitable share or not, because as I said earlier on, what is on the book is different from V2 kwa ground. So for example, you allocate 480 billion, but you disperse 385 billion to counties. This year we are seeing an allocation of about 405.1 billion shillings that we expect outside the grants, loans, and even some of those resources like equalization fund, etc. But equitable share for counties is about 405 billion. Now, whether that will trickle down in terms of sending it to counties or not, against some of the things that we also continue to see, that devolved functions that are supposed to be fully devolved, almost 12 years into our devolved system of government, is still not devolved, is not fully done. But we see resources being put into those functions at the national level. For example, a universal health. Health is fully devolved, and that national government has critical elements, for example, national health policy, development, for example, referral hospitals, among other very limited functionalities. But budget 2025-2026, one of the top 4 sectors that have been fully, heavily financed is actually healthcare. Because you have education at about 700 billion, then you have infrastructure, then you have healthcare as number 3, then you have digital economy. What does that tell us? For example, for those who are interested in devolution, that there is not very clear goodwill to be able to strengthen devolution, and especially looking at critical sectors. If you talk about, for example, the headline story on school feeding for children is devolved, which means that this is an ECD function. So if you are to look at education as either devolved fully, the aspects that are devolved for education, those are resources that are supposed to be going to county governments. But we still continue to see either stifling of those resources at the national level or overtaking some of those resources. And very heavy budgets again. I know Bonadiji was asking, why is the office of the president, for example, taking a bigger chunk of the executive budget? And I think one of the caveats he put is that we are headed towards an election period. So institutions like Interior will have to be fully funded so that security is enhanced, and among other things. But if you were to look at, for example, school feeding, why would the Minister of Education want to either budget for school feeding at the national level or not budget for school feeding at that level, whereas that is a devolved function, but we also continue to see governors in their execution of their ECD mandates putting budgets into school feeding programs, despite, again, questions that have been raised by the Controller of Budget, the Auditor General, among others. And then finally, I think it's very, very critical. And
maybe we take a break?
Never
we take a break. No, but the question I want to ask all of you, are Kenyans becoming more aware of the finance? You know, when it comes to budget reading and the estimates, Kenyans are becoming more aware and alert when it comes to the finance bill. Everybody can talk about finance bill right now, randomly on the streets. Kevin, you are the one who was talking. Where's your camera? I think that's one. Please take us on a break. Just say, let's take a break, we'll be right back.
Let's take a break, we'll be right back.
And remember, a question was put to me.
We'll be right back. My job is not a threat, I can promise you. Okay, stay with us.
"19 nations will compete in the Total Energies CAF African Nations Championship, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania 2024, which will be staged from 2nd to 30th August 2025. Amongst the 4 groups in the tournament A to D, Kenya is pooled in Group A, together with Morocco, Angola, DR Congo and Zambia.
Algeria from the set piece, the header is on target, but it's saved.
This unique competition featuring the best locally based players from across the continent definitely has something for everyone. Just bring your A game as you let it flow live and exclusive on KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner.
In a world where news is ever changing, staying informed is more important than ever.
Join us every week on News Check, your go-to show for the latest in current affairs, breaking news and in-depth analysis.
A warm welcome to KBC News Check.
From politics to global events, we bring you content that matter to you.
We're not just speaking about the governance and how we want to see it, but want to actually participate.
Get your facts, hear from the experts, and really understand what is happening around you.
We need to change our system first.
You have to do the impossible to make sure the message is home.
Stay ahead, stay informed, stay engaged.
Will these people, everybody agree?
Just listen to me.
Let's give him a chance to clear the air.
Catch News Check every Tuesday and Wednesday from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. Only on KBC Channel 1.
And welcome back. All of us have their cups of coffee. Apart from Kevin.
You want to have a taste of this one?
Oh, he's sorted. Okay. So the question I want to ask all of you gentlemen is that are Kenyans becoming more aware, Ronald, about the finance bill? I mean, everybody randomly on the street talks about the finance bill. How is it so all of a sudden?
Yeah. So, you know, we are living in an information age. And today, information spreads more faster than anything else because of access to the internet and the mobile phone, and now to TV stations like you guys are doing. Because when we were growing up, not many people could afford to have a TV set in their home. So this is the era of an information age. The only challenge is that even though Kenyans are more aware, Kenyans feel more helpless to change the situation, because it's like now Kenyans feel they are hostage to the government, whereby the government is not doing the right thing, but they are not able to change anything now. And the government thinks that Kenyans are not aware. And one of the things I wanted to say, maybe as answer your question, if I were to advise the government, there are 4 areas I will advise the government to do. If there is any government that needs Doge, you know, the Doge that you've seen in the US, it's the Kenyan government. Most probably the US government didn't need the Doge, but the Kenyan government needed the Doge like no any other government in the world, because one of the biggest challenges that the Kenyan government has is
Ronald, you know, because
wastages.
Victor has asked us to speak to the Mwananchi who might not understand what you mean by the Doge.
Yeah.
It's Department of Government Efficiency.
Department of Government Efficiency.
The one that was led by Musk.
By Elon Musk in the US. So the biggest problem we have with this government is inefficiency in terms of even utilization of the resources. Let me tell you, the government of Kenya is one of the most richest governments in Africa. In terms of resources, assets, and all that.
How can I term that? What you said is one of the richest in Africa.
Yes. There is significant assets that the government has if you just move across this country. Land, properties, you know, public property is huge. But most of those properties, they don't generate anything to the government. They are mostly obsolete. And one of the best things that I've ever had the government say is privatization. The only problem is when it comes to privatization, now we want to privatize the most profitable government entities and forget the loss making. Of course, we've started with the sugar. And again, the other aspect of it, when we do privatization, are we doing it with integrity and transparency? And are we making sure that we are actually making the most out of those private assets? And privatization and moving, if you go to the UK, the government is very efficient in privatization. If you have money, you run it and pay lease to the government. And the government makes a lot of money from those collections of leasing of the government properties to private people who will run them more efficiently. So if the government approaches privatization in a more efficient way, then they will make a lot of money. And then number 2 is optimization of the assets we have. If you look at most of the private, public universities in Kenya, and we have huge, and very many public universities compared to our neighbors. But the problem is, with the huge, you look at those public universities, there's no way they can be unsustainable. They have huge chunks of land. They can invest in hospitality, in farming. They can actually be centers of excellence in terms of entrepreneurship. But most of them are actually, the leadership is so poor. And most often when you appoint somebody to a state office or a public entity, you get the most incompetent. And that's why you realize most of the assets, the property we have, they are not optimized. If you look at another area that we're not even making money, is tourism. Like I visited some of the neighboring countries, they have almost nothing. They're trying to make something out of nothing. We have a huge tourism resources that we are not even able to actually optimize. How many parks are in Kenya? So many national parks, so many tourism attractions, but we are not, if you look at this bill, we are even saying we are going to tax the assembly of tourism cars, meaning you are going to make the investment in tourism a big problem. We're also even introducing the issue of removal of capital deductions on investment in hotel buildings, jeopardizing the tourism industry. So you realize that we're not optimizing. The area that we have not optimized is education tourism. If you look at our neighbors, people are always looking forward to come and get education in Kenya. But what is happening to the education in Kenya, like even beginning from the University of Nairobi to most, they are collapsing. We are not even able to even get people come here for education because our main universities are under debt. They're in crisis because of inefficient and lack of transparency in terms of management of those institutions and incompetence. If I was supposed to restructure educational institutions in Kenya, I will actually say there must be academic, and then must be management, whereby we have a CEO running a university and a professor managing the academic part of the university, because that's the biggest problem we have with the universities.
I hope someone has just listened to that for Kenya. That is called for Kenya.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other area that we have not also optimized is even health tourism. You know, we have hospitals here in Kenya. Can we try to make sure that we build world-class hospitals in Kenya and actually attract neighbors to come to these hospitals? And we're going to increase our revenue probably to 5 trillion shillings. And then the other area that the government is not talking, if I look at this budget, I don't see any provision for fighting corruption. There was a governor who was saying that the universal healthcare workers, most of them were fictitious. We've not seen the government being proactive in holding those who have employed fictitious or even those ghost workers in the under universal healthcare program. And yet, you know, we're just trying to shift some taxes here and all there to collect, but we are not. The government, the citizens don't feel the government is proactive enough in addressing the issues that affect them, and the government has actually not explored other avenues to balloon the income through sweating most of these assets and optimizing them, and there will be no problem with the taxes. Great. Actually, we need to be the lowest tax regime in the region because we are the most richest in terms of assets, in terms of human capital, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of resources. Yeah.
Okay. Let me ask you, DG, when it comes to the public participation, you know, you've had that across the country. I talked about Kenyans being much aware about the finance bill. What do you say about that?
First and foremost, it is constitutional, it is legal for any Kenyan to access any information from any government entity, whether county or national. Secondly, you must be aware of that which is affecting you. These taxes are being raised from Kenyans, so you expect them to get interested, to know how my payslip is being affected. Thirdly, of late, there is a lot of access to information from social media, from mainstream media, print, electronic, and that is available even in our phones. So Kenyans are getting a lot of information, and whenever something happens and it is of public interest, you see it is shared so fast, and within no time it is almost with everyone. So Kenyans are fully aware of what is happening around them and that which is likely to affect them. I think I have a slightly opinion on don'ts in Kenya. We need no department of efficiency in our government. What we need is we go back to institutionalism. We allow Auditor General to do his or her work. We allow ESCC to do their work. We allow DCI and any of these agencies to do. You know, you have heard from various people that that is not the case. And in short, that is state capture, where you hold state agencies and you control them to your advantage or for your own personal or private gain. If all these agencies are allowed each to do what their mandate is without political interference, so that if you stand somewhere in the Kapsaret and you distribute almost 50 million worth of goods, you are saying there is no single cent from the government. KRA is really coming forward and tell us this is what this person has done, this is the tax he has paid, and this is money not from any economic crime, so it is okay. Okay? So we need that freeness. But can I tell you, let Commissioner General of KRA come forward and make that statement, and you see whether he will be in the job in the next 1 hour.
Okay. Oops.
So in this case,
probably
in this case,
yes,
I think we need to go back to institutionalism.
Yeah.
Know that we have our national government, we have counties, and we respect the mandate of each. That way, by the way, there is a question that was posted to me about the bloated
government
wage bill in counties. We need to know where we are coming from. It is true we are over 12 years since we started devolution in Kenya. You know, we found already bloated employment from the local and municipal authorities then. National government seconded employees to counties. The founding governors also employed.
Yeah.
When the law of that 5% came to being, very few counties were within that limit. Now, the only options that counties and governors have, I believe, is to maybe have an handshake, golden handshake kind of thing, so that some of these employees of the county can willingly exit, but they also be compensated so well, so that they are attracted to take up that opportunity.
Yeah.
So I think there are combination of factors why counties have the bloated wage bill to date. But I think we need to make these entities efficient, effective, and centers of innovation and creativity.
Okay.
It is possible, it can be done.
You know, I'm looking at you, but I have compound eyes. I can see Kevin raising his hand.
Yes.
No, I just wanted to make some additions on 2 points, actually 3, but let me just concentrate on 2. I wanted to share on the OSR, the different streams and why some counties are doing better than the others, and then the public participation angle, and lastly is on this bloated wage bill. And my ask to the DG is that let us not stop flooding human resources in offices that are not capacitated. What that means is that the number of advisors, the same way people talk about the president's advisors at the national level, is the same way it's happening even at the county levels. Just because somebody was carrying your water bottles in the campaign terrain, so you think that the best reward you can do is to, bend the procurement and rules to rather employment regulations to have them in office. But again, I'm reminded of the Transition Authority report done by Mheshimiwa Kinuthia Wamwangi many years ago. And the question is, why haven't we looked at a very clear implementation of that particular report? So that even as we talk about, for example, retirement ages and the youth bulge that we have in this country against the macro sectors again that provide employment for both formal and informal sectors. And I think that one of the best reports that we have in this country through institutionalization is the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics that I think yearly provides us with sectors that are employing a majority of people. And so why can't we consider looking at implementing those progressive reports and therefore really adhering to the recommendations that are made, number one. Number two is on public participation. Victor, the reality is that we do not have a national law on public participation. So it becomes very difficult even to underscore what public participation is, despite constitutional underpinnings like in Article 10, I think Article 35 on access to information, Article 34 etc. And so my request is to National Assembly, because I know that there is a bill for 2024 public participation bill that came from the Senate, now is at the National Assembly. If we can fast track it so that citizens are empowered to ensure that that public participation is actually paying, so that people like Ross Njeri don't have to be arraigned in court for being innovative, to want to create spaces for enhancing public participation and also sharing information. That way, I'm sure that we'll be able to, guarantee wins for public participation that are both in the Constitution, but also vital kwa ground. For example, who tells us how many persons with disability are involved in this public participation process? Even at the Finance Committee in Parliament, you don't see people provided with braille copies of the budget. The document that some of the documents that have been going through, for example, on expenditure development, the estimates is 513 pages. So if you were to, for example, want to put persons with disability in a hall, and you want to take them through the budget 2025-2026, what are you talking about? Some of the environments where we undertake our public participation are not accessible to people in wheelchairs and ETs.
Yes or no? Do we have hope for this country?
Of course, there is at most hope. There is extreme hope. Kenyans are getting much more informed. They are taking charge of their governance spaces and spheres, and they are asking the relevant questions. So in the next election, if you are not able to answer those questions,
it's about ideas.
You will not have to run.
Do we have hope?
Yeah, there's a lot of hope. I look at it that where we've come from, Kenya was at a stage where we were not sure where the country was headed. In 2023, things were very bad. Then we followed with the protests that led to the Gen Z protests at invading parliament. Yeah. And today here we are. If we were able to pay the Eurobond debt that was so severe that pushed our economy to the brink of dollar exchanging at 160, going up to a stable 129, that gives me hope. The current challenges that we have with the Social Health Authority, you can see where things have stabilized. 3-4 months ago, there was hue and cry every day about Social Health Authority not working. Today, those mamas have been quietened. Those who are in the critical health space, those who have patients with dialysis, all this cancer, they are getting treated for free in this country. That has never been. So there is a lot.
Hold our horses.
And with a healthy nation, you have so many things going the right way. Then we talk about the punitive NSSF contributions. In the last 2 years, what we have contributed in social towards our future in terms of post-retirement benefit dwarfs the entire contributions over the entire life of this country. In 2 years, the growth of NSSF contribution, and you can see our saving culture has dwarfed the entire life we've had since 1965 in the last 2 years. So there are a lot of good things coming up. But like they say, there used to be a politician back in my county, or the greater South Nyanza, who used to say, when a mother is in labor, she curses even the man in her life. But as soon as the child comes out, she smiles and says, this is good. So I think there are good things, but of course they will come with a lot of pain. And therefore my urge for the government is that some of these reforms look good in the long run, but the process of implementing them may be painful, and therefore we must try and have some mitigating measures that alleviate the pain of the people. Otherwise, we may end up with a situation where people lose hope, yet in real sense, from every angle you look at it, things look good. And that brings me back to where we were discussing, why is the government going towards exempt away from zero? And I like numbers. In the entire region, Kenya spends 3.38% of its revenue on managing tax expense. We are the highest in the region. Uganda does almost 0.1%. So that means, and if you break down where that money is going, 65% is on VAT refunds. So clearly there's a problem there. And how much is it tying? If it's 3.38%, I would rather have that money redirected to support the common man here in a manner that helps them. But again, we are also doing a lot of social support to our aged. We have to give these seniors some money every month, stipend. That speaks to neglect over the years in terms of how we plan for retirement. When we start giving children food in school, what does that tell you? The poverty levels have grown, the parents are unable to afford. So what do you need to do? Yes, support them, but improve healthcare so that they get free healthcare. Ensure that you have the agricultural sector working so that the food production and cost of living is lowered, so that every family can be able to afford certain decent spaces. And then, of course, the elephant in the room, the housing program, which is controversial. Can we have affordable housing in this country? So that if I employ, like Ronald and I are practitioners, we run audit firms. We employ employees. The money I give to my employee of 100,000 as salary would make more sense if only 10,000 shillings is what that employee pays as rent. But if I'm giving him 100,000 shillings and he lives in this city and he has to pay 40, 50,000, it becomes very difficult. So we also need to address that. The how may be the challenge, but I think I like the framework of how this looks. So I give hope.
You have hope. You know, I like DG because he's a man of few words. Do we have hope?
The answer is yes. If this country was never destroyed under YK 1992, I think with limitation of terms, we have a lot of hope. Number two, the democratization process. You know, if I do anything stupid, it will be called by Kenyans. All walks of Kenyans will tell, no. Bwana Mangangi, that is yours. It's not for this country. Number three, there is a lot of hope. Despite the fact that this regime wants to take us back to 1992, through a way of very funny empowerment. You know, within 1 week in my region, they have splashed over 100 million. Donating, this is from the president, this is the deputy president, this is what, and we are looking and we are saying, wait a minute, counties do not have funds. Our health care is collapsing.
Why don't you empower
our
people?
Education?
That is empowerment program.
No.
Why don't you empower your people?
Just a minute. We have very learned people here. If in very simple mathematics, Victor, you take the 4.2 trillion and you take the 400 proposed billion to devolution, that is less than 8.8%. It is not even at least the 15% that is supposed to go to counties. But this government is very clever. They use certain metrics to justify their actions so that the huge chunks of money remains at national level and the governors at the county level are not delivering what they are supposed to deliver simply because they do not have resources to. In fact, they are being set up by this administration so that they can fail. But that not said, no country on earth has ever been built through the kind of empowerment programs. What we need to do, we need to go back to institutionalism. What do I mean? Under President Kibaki, we had youth fund. Under President Kibaki, we had youth enterprise fund. We need to channel those funds through a well-planned policy so that it is equitable, it goes to every part of this country, as opposed to only choir praise singers who are given these monies and they fly all over selling this government. That is not the way. That is not the way to go. It will only go to a selected sections of the country. We want to champion a policy where we are going to ensure this country develops every corner of this country and not a section of it.
Thank you. Ronald, do you have hope?
Yes, hope we must have.
You said your life is about to be threatened. But now do we have hope? I want to see the comparison and the contradiction.
So, hope we must have.
All right.
But you know, DG speaking here it almost makes us almost hopeless. You know, he came from hope to hopeless.
No. Victor, please. You know,
you're protected.
Yes. You know, Victor.
Okay.
When everybody wants a good country, and if it is good for UDA and for Wiper and for everybody.
Great.
Yes. So what I can say, we have hope.
In 1 minute, please.
Because we have a government system. We have the parliament, we have the executive, we have the judiciary, we have the ethics and corruption, we have the police. If everyone does their work, then this is a very beautiful country. And then number two is that we have hope, because if these people don't do their job, 2027, you can recall them. We have an option to recall them in the next election. So that's the hope we have, because you see, some people don't have that opportunity.
Thank you.
If you're doomed, you are doomed forever. But I'm hoping that we also make sure that we build that hope by making sure that next time we don't elect people based on how much money they gave us, but based on, because I believe as Kenyans we've put leaders under a lot of pressure, whereby they're supposed to give us handouts to elect them. We must elect with a lot of wisdom and knowledge. Others, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
What are you saying? We are done.
I'm saying...
No, you
know, Esbond said something very important. That increase in taxation to manufacturers might not necessarily increase the cost of living. It does. It does. Because that must be passed to consumer. And the majority of the consumers are Kenyans.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. You know what's important? Today we've not talked about politics. We talked about matters money, because at the end of the day, it affects all of us.
Maybe just clarification. I think the DG got something wrong. I didn't say that increase, or rather moving commodities to exempt,
in between
does not necessarily.
Okay.
What I meant was that the manufacturers rarely pass this on, the benefit to consumers.
Okay.
Or benefit.
But then, Victor, if you allow me to thank one of the CSs that I have seen engaging with the public, CS Treasury Mbadi. I have attended 3 sessions where the CS has been physically present to engage with citizens on the budget.
The one speaking
is... the problem is whether what he gets there will find its way.
So the one speaking is Deputy Governor of Machakos. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming.
He means well, but I'm not sure that this is...
Hesbon Omolo, Council Member East Park, Kevin Osido is Executive Director of County Governors Watch, and CPA Ronald Bossi, who is Group Managing Partner, Ronald LLP. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming to the show. We've done